when I have educated friends of mine all over the country trying to give me information from Chinese religious cults. I'm like, dude, we jumped the shark long ago. That's when it gets scary to me.
That's when it gets scary to him. Chinese religious cults and, Americans with flags in their front yards. His brain is not a good brain. He's not an honest man. He's not a truthful person. Oh, no. Not even close. Joe Scarborough, of course, on MSDNC Morning Joke. Morning Joke, as it is known from coast to coast. He has dozens of viewers on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, and that's more or less it. I think he does his fake broadcast from his home in Florida with a picture of the U.S. Capitol behind him, because even in a still shot, while silent, he's lying. He lies about everything. They lie, that's what they do. Well, happy Wednesday to you. It is hump day in America, and you know what that means in the Clinton household. We also have today mailbag. It's mailbag day here on the Chris Plante Show, and I have in my hand, both my hands right now, both of my hands, the mailbag questions for the day. I'm going to prop them right up here in front of myself so I don't forget again. But there it is. And Kamala Harris, you know her. She's Kamala, and she's in Jakarta, Indonesia today. She doesn't know where that is, but she flew there on an Air Force plane, and she sat down with an Associated Press reporter who is a big Democrat voter, because they all are. And she tried to answer some questions, but didn't do a very good job because, she's Kamala Harris, and she's not very bright. Let's face it. I mean, if it weren't for Willie Brown and a sexual affair, who knows what she'd be doing now? Probably not much. Working at Staples or something like that. So the Associated Press interviewing Kamala Harris. And the headline that the Associated Press gets is pretty crazy. Harris says Trump shouldn't be an exception for January 6th accountability. Now, they're saying that, here's what the Democrats are saying, because Enrique Tarrio, they're just putting more black men in jail, aren't they, the Democrats? Enrique Tarrio, who's African-American and Cuban-American, was sentenced yesterday to 22 years in prison, 22 years in prison, because they say even though he wasn't in Washington on January 6th, that he deserves more than 2 decades in a penitentiary, because they say he was the leader, you see. And now the Democrats and the media, but I repeat myself, are saying, well, Trump was the leader, bigger than Enrique Tarrio, so he should get more time than anybody in prison. You see, this is what they're saying, because the left always puts their political enemies in prison all over the world. Vladimir Putin, who's a communist, and I love liberals like to say, well, he's not a communist. Yeah, he's not a communist. Right. He's a former KGB colonel, a Stasi officer. He's a Soviet-era communist who said that the greatest catastrophe, the greatest tragedy of the 20th century was the collapse of the Soviet Union. And he's doing everything he can right now to reconstitute the old Soviet Union. Just don't call him a communist around Democrats, because they're too stupid to know what we're talking about here. It's pretty amazing. And in any event, the Associated Press now, with their lead is Trump accountability. That's the word that they're using, is accountability. They don't mean accountability. That's not the word that they actually mean. And also, Kamala Harris is meeting with the president of Indonesia, and I'm sure that's going to go well. His name is Joko Widodo. Widodo. He's Joko Widodo. I'm not making it up. It's Jokowidodo. Joko Widodo. Joko Widodo. Just makes you want to write a song, doesn't it? Speaking of which, I got to work. I haven't done enough on it since the other day, but I started writing a song the other day about the Democrats, and I'm going to get back to you on that, because there is a song coming There's a song coming. It was inspired by a caller last week, as a matter of fact, or by a conversation, a back and forth we had with one of our brilliant and well-informed callers. Good stuff. But a Kamala Harris meeting with President Joko Widodo. And we got that. Now let's actually go to Kamala, because she's always hilarious. She sounded. Did you watch the video, Michael? She looked very sleepy, didn't she? She looked very tired. You could barely hold her up. She needs a Dr. Pepper or something, because she needs to perk up. She was falling asleep, kind of slumped over, and her eyes looked sleepy. Her mouth was sort of hanging open. It looked like she was asleep on an airplane seat. Now, when you travel on these U.S. Air Force, I assume she flew to Indonesia on a U.S. Air Force 757 belonging to the 89th Airlift Wing at Andrews, just outside of Washington, D.C. This is my assumption because I have traveled to Jakarta, Indonesia, which is where she is now, with a U.S. Cabinet Secretary, Defense Secretary, aboard one of these U.S. Air Force 757s out of Andrews, and in the 757 there is a room for the principal, that would be the vice president in this case, and there is a bed there, and it kind of folds out and everything, but it's a private room aboard the 757, and it's an office bedroom for the cabinet secretary, or in this case, the vice president, and she should be able to sleep real good. You got to stop for gas a couple of times along the way from Maryland to Jakarta, but aboard one of those 757s you do. But I've also flown there on an E4B, a 747, where we refueled in flight. Much more fun that way, I think. But never mind that. Let's get back to Kamala, because now the Associated Press sat down with her and interviewed her, and everything is on video now. And Sleepy Kamala, you got Sleepy Joe, now we got Sleepy Kamala too. In Jakarta, Indonesia, Vice President Kamala Harris said Wednesday that those responsible for the efforts to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election. This is, now wait a minute, they've got the Vice President of the United States in a one-on-one interview with the Associated Press in Jakarta, Indonesia, where she's traveling to meet with heads of state. And the lead is January 6th. This is an all-out team effort by Team Democrat, the Democrat Party, and the media, but I repeat myself. And Chris Mergerian is the typist at the Associated Press, working on behalf of the Democrat Party. Vice President Kamala Harris said Wednesday that those responsible for the effort to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election and the ensuing violence at the U.S. Capitol must be held accountable. Yeah, because that's not happening. How about the people that burned my city, Washington, D.C., and burned Seattle, and burned Portland and the Mark Hatfield Courthouse, and police stations and police cars, and injured thousands of police? Where's the accountability? Because the left, very, very different thing. So that's the lead from the Associated Press, and that means that the reporter's a joke, and that this interview is a joke, and that this story is a joke, and it's just Democrat Party propaganda repackaged as journalism. I'm making quotation marks with my fingers. So federal prosecutors have indicted Trump, the frontrunner in the 2024 presidential nomination. Now, this means that really Kamala is just a sock puppet for purposes of this writer's little story out of Jakarta, Indonesia.
Well,
and hey, that was Kamala. Was she falling asleep? She sounded like she was falling asleep there. Well, yeah. All right, so let's go to Kamala. All right.
I do now have the January 6th cut too.
Okay. Well, let's see. Let's go. We're still collecting because she's on the road and all that stuff. But let's go to soundbite number 1 from Kamala, because she's there. We're supposed to be talking about North Korea. Kim Jong-un going to Moscow to meet with Vlad the Impaler Putin, who's waging a land war in Europe against Ukraine. And by the way, Antony Blinken arrived in Ukraine within the last 12 hours or so. And he's there to give another $1 billion, another $1 billion of our dollars to Ukraine to fight for the home team. You see the story that came out on the Nazis in Ukraine fighting against the Russians, the skinheads with the Nazi tattoos and stuff. But pay no attention to that. That's not in the Washington Post. It's not in the New York Times. Kamala is unaware of it. Blinken is probably unaware of it. They don't follow the news. They just get briefed by people. You know what I mean? But here's Kamala. Now, Kim Jong-un, here's the crazy thing. I heard this reported just like this today. The United States of America has run out of 155 millimeter artillery shells because we gave them all to Ukraine. So we have no more 155 rounds, which is a standard battlefield round should we have the bad fortune to need them. We don't have any because Joe Biden gave them all to Ukraine. And I heard today, well, since we depleted our own 155 millimeter artillery arsenal, they said Joe Biden had to give them cluster munitions. Cluster bombs, which most countries consider to be illegal anti-personnel munitions. And it was just like that. Well, Joe Biden depleted our 155 munitions completely and had no choice, but to revert to giving cluster munitions to Ukraine. Now, North Korea is jumping in because North Korea can give Russia all kinds of munitions. And by the way, none of that is in this Associated Press story where they interviewed the vice president in Jakarta, Indonesia. But they did ask, hey, weapons from North Korea to Russia. And listen to this forceful position that, soundbite number one, the forceful position that Kamala Harris took.
I think it's ill-advised
for
there to be any collaboration between Russia and North Korea. I'm concerned about it. We are concerned about it.
We are concerned. I am concerned about munitions from North Korea and going to Russia. And by the way, it is the axis of evil. We had that soundbite yesterday. We didn't actually play it. But they are the new axis of evil. We've got Russia and Putin, China and Xi Jinping, North Korea and Kim Jong-un. Those are all communists. There is a new Cold War underway because of the weak sister in the White House, a great term from 7 Days in May about the President of the United States. And, of course, Iran, because they're all in with Iran. And it turns out now that North Korea is going to be providing Russia with munitions with which they will kill Ukrainians. But Antony Blinken is there to give them another $1 billion of our money because this war must go on forever and ever. Because Joe Biden is the poodle of the military-industrial complex. And that's okay. Not that the Democrat Party is the party of warfare, unless you count the Civil War, World War I, World War II, the Korean War, and the Vietnam War, and also the bad ideas in the Clinton Justice Department that led to the success of the September 11th attacks that got us into the war that will never end. Then we went to the mealy-mouthed, translucent national security advisor for Joe Biden, Jake Sullivan, who looks like he needs immediate medical attention.
Providing weapons to Russia for use on the battlefield to attack grain silos and the heating infrastructure of major cities as we head into winter, to try to conquer territory that belongs to another sovereign nation. This is not going to reflect well on North Korea, and they will pay a price for this in the international community.
Grain silos? They're going to attack grain silos? The Soviets did starve millions of Ukrainians to death under Joseph Stalin by stealing all of their crops. But that's what commies do. Grain silos, and that is the translucent Jake Sullivan, our national security advisor, who is an embarrassment, of course. And they will pay a price in the international community. There is no international community. And the United States leads or not, and we don't right now. Just amazing stuff. Let's hit Michael Waltz, Congressman Michael Waltz, on North Korea providing Russia with munitions to kill Ukrainians.
I'm very worried about the amount of ammunition that they could provide, particularly artillery. And they can provide thousands and thousands and thousands of rounds that will allow Russia to stretch the war out in Ukraine.
Which is, what everybody wants, from what I can tell. Who's in charge of the peace talks? Oh, yeah, nobody. Hey, President Biden's nefarious plan to introduce the digital dollar is already underway, and it's very important to understand the potential consequences for your family and yourself and your retirement, because, believe it or not, what they're telling us is not true. This is not in your best interest, and time is of the essence. So taking action now is a really smart idea if you want to protect your savings and your retirement. You can help protect your savings and your retirement from the risks of the digital dollar by diversifying with gold and silver IRAs. You get started by calling the experts at American Alternative Assets. Call them today at 800-488-4GOLD20. That's 888-446-5320. They'll give you all the guidance you need on safeguarding your retirement savings. Say no to Joe Biden's digital dollar. Call American Alternative Assets at 888-4GOLD20. 888-446-5320. Call them today. Individual results may vary. There's no guarantee that past performance will be indicative of future results. Seek your own legal, tax, investment, and financial advice before opening an account. Boom. Yeah, it's the axis of evil. It's the bad guys. And unfortunately, they know that we have this sock puppet in the White House, so they're rolling over the world. Stand by for more. Hey, it's Chris Plant, excited to tell you about our July 2024 Listener Sea Cruise. We'll be sailing around the British Isles, visiting Scotland and Ireland. Please join us. Book by this July 31st for extra savings. Visit ChrisPlantCruise.com. I tell you what, let's take a quick call. Let's go to Jeff, calling from Scott City, Kansas. Jeffrey, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Chris, how you doing?
Hey, Jeff, I'm great.
Hey, first off, I'm a Eden Pure customer from your recommendation. Love those things.
Is that right? Very good, very good. They really, really work, don't they? I've got 2 in my place.
They do. I got 3 in mine. You can move them anywhere you want.
Isn't that great? Yeah, go ahead.
Yep. What I'm calling about, say the leftists get everything they want, every program, every dollar, all the destruction, everything they want. What's their end game? I mean, what's left?
Well, that's a great question, and I've been answering this for years. When you give them everything they want, you know what happens, Jeff? They want more. They want more. There's no end to their appetite for power, their lust for control, and the left is never done. When you give them everything they want more. There is always something more. Crazy, wacky, criminal Democrats. Why do they commit so many crimes, Michael? That's what I want to know. Honestly. And they riot, and they loot, and they burn, and they sack, and plunder, and then they rinse and repeat. They don't usually rinse, do they? They don't bathe in normal Western fashion, do they? No, they don't. And then you have one little dust-up for a couple of hours, and it's the biggest thing that ever happened. It's Pearl Harbor. It's September 11th. It's true, Ashley Babbitt was shot and killed while unarmed after serving 12 years in the Air Force, but she was the only person killed that day. Remember, then they made up the idea that a whole bunch of people were killed when it was never true. It was always a lie. And Joe Biden lied about that and lied and lied. Of course, he lies all the time, doesn't he? Let's get back to Kamala, because she's not the sharpest bulb. She was being interviewed by this fluffer for the Democrat Party, who is allegedly working for the Associated Press, the Associated Press. The AP, they used to be a news organization, pretty straight news organization. But now they got this fluffer named Chris Majarian, who traveled apparently to Indonesia with Kamala to ask her a bunch of inane questions. And then the lead of his story is about Trump. Now, you traveled to Indonesia with the vice president to do a story whose lead is about Trump? That's kind of peculiar. Maybe he's looking for a job on The View, because they've got some mental issues there too, don't they? All right, let's go back to Kamala. This fluffer with the Associated Press, Chris Majarian, he asked her about Joe Biden being old. Joe Biden sure is old, isn't he? And, a lot of people his age are much younger than he is, of course, but not him. Here is the Associated Press fluffing Kamala Harris about Joe Biden and his age.
One issue for voters in the upcoming election is President Biden's age. An AP poll recently showed that 77% of Americans and 69% of Democrats believe he's too old for a second term.
What is that? 77% of Americans and 69% of Democrats. You got to differentiate between Americans and Democrats, because you got Democrats over here, and then you have Americans over there. 77%, those numbers right? 77% of Americans and 69% of Democrats, which is a different category of person. That's the thing about that.
An AP poll recently showed that 77% of Americans and 69% of Democrats.
That's right. That's 70. Got not the same bucket. You're looking at different buckets there. And then Kamala babbled again, looking sleep deprived.
Do you think he's ready to serve as president until he's 86?
No.
As somebody who works with him, have you seen changes in recent years?
First of all, let me say that our president has been an extraordinary leader who has accomplished things that previous presidents hoped and dreamed and promised they would do and did not achieve.
Yeah, that other presidents have dreamed of and not achieved. A lot of presidents have had nightmares about falling up the stairs to Air Force One again and again and tripping over sandbags at graduation ceremonies at military academies. But Joe Biden has actually done them and had the crackhead, stripper, knocker-upper, Russian hooker, Dayton, Chinese business sucking son like Hunter Biden. And some presidents have only dreamed of that. But Joe Biden has accomplished that and spent trillions and trillions of dollars. And then other presidents have dreamed that the New York Times would say everything they did was real good and that the Inflation Reduction Act was real good. And then Joe Biden later said that he wished he hadn't called it the Inflation Reduction Act because it doesn't reduce inflation, which is a minor detail in the scheme of things. And they have, this great infrastructure bill. There's still more than $1 trillion. I'm still looking for one Golden Gate Bridge or one new O'Hare Airport. $1 trillion is a lot of money. Where's the high-speed rail project? Where is that? Because $1 trillion is $1,000 billion. And that's a lot of money. And they keep bragging about the infrastructure bill. But I don't see any infrastructure. Oh, I saw orange cones. I actually had a liberal say this on Newsmax last week. Well, when I came in, there were orange cones along the side of the road. So now Joe Biden gets credit for every orange cone, every pothole filled in the United States of America because of the giant amount of money. These are unserious people.
You remember that whole thing about Infrastructure Week? Joe Biden, under his leadership and because of his leadership, passed the most substantial infrastructure law
spending
in recent American history, which is transformative in terms of what it is currently in the process of doing.
It's transformative in terms of what is currently in the process of doing. And the idiot fluffer who came along to fluff sits there with his mouth hanging open. And yeah, that's real good. What has that $1 trillion built? Can you point to a high-speed rail project, to an airport, to a seaport, to a new bridge, to nowhere, anything? And the answer is no. They can't point. No, I saw potholes being filled on my way to work this morning. Well, that would be perfectly normal, wouldn't it? That's always happened, hasn't it? Yeah, but now Joe Biden gets credit for every local road project because the Democrats, Kamala Harris, just amazing. Yeah, so important. And then she was asked, well, you're the vice president of the United States, and the president is obviously at death's door. So are you standing by with a bag packed in case you have to move into the White House and kick out Dr. Jill?
Questions about the president's age often go hand in hand with questions about how you would step in the role, if necessary. Do you feel prepared for that possibility? And certainly as vice president prepared you for that job.
She should, yes.
And how would you describe that process?
Well, first of all,
Joe dies.
I'm answering your hypothetical. But Joe Biden's going to be fine.
He's going to be fine.
That is not going to come to fruition.
No, right.
But let us also understand that every vice president understands that when they take the oath, that they must be very clear about the responsibility they may have.
She's an oath keeper.
To take over the job of being president. I am no different.
I am no different. Well, that's really not true. You are different, honestly. That's the thing about you, is that nobody has any confidence in you. You have the lowest, and he doesn't say this, of course. You have the lowest approval rating of any vice president in the history of the country since we started taking polls having to do with the approval rating of vice presidents in the United States. And yours is the lowest ever. But he didn't ask that, did he? Because he's a fluffer for the DNC. He's a Democrat Party boy. He's a poodle of the DNC. And he's with the Associated Press, which again, used to be a very straight news organization. They have the AP Style Guide, the Associated Press Style Guide, which newsrooms across America use. And they have things like, you capitalize the word black and you capitalize the word white, because it's racist not to. And what else they have? They have things like don't, in the AP Style Guide, things like don't use people's pronouns without asking them first, and things like that. They've lost it. The Associated Press has lost it. And then, of course, it's Donald Trump, which turned out to be the lead of this DNC fluffers story.
You mentioned holding people accountable. Obviously, a big issue right now is the indictments against President Trump. Is that part of what you mean about holding people accountable for January 6th?
Well, as you know, I spent the majority of my career as a prosecutor. I believe that people should be held accountable under the law. And when they break the law, there should be accountability. And I support it when it happens.
And does that extend to the former president?
Well, everyone has their right to their day in court. But absolutely, people should be held accountable. But under our system of law, right? Let the evidence and facts take it where it may.
The evidence and facts take it where it may. What? The evidence and facts, I think she meant to say. And then it would be where they may, not where it may. But, that's okay. That's the good stuff. And by the way, wasn't it Kamala Harris that tweeted out support for a bail fund for rioters and looters and arsonists attacking the police and burning businesses across our country? Yes, it was. Yeah. She helped violent rioters in Minneapolis get out of jail to do more damage, as Senator Tom Cotton tweeted at the time, because she was very active in her support of rioters who were burning and looting and sacking and plundering and attacking the police. Violence all over the country, and she was instrumental in raising bail money to put the criminals back on the street to commit more crimes. Isn't that true? So there's Kamala, and she, she's standing by to become president, though. Gosh, is she ready? Who's more ready than her? She's the readiest person you ever did see. Honestly, just amazing. How appalling. Appalling. That's what I'm telling you. Let's get to Congressman James Comer and because the Democrats, they're obstructing justice all over the place, and Kamala, she just wants more criminals on the street to loot and burn and attack the police and destroy businesses, which is what the Democrats are really good at. They destroy businesses on every level, don't they? Yes, they do. But Congressman James Comer, has now put out he is issuing subpoenas, multiple subpoenas, which will include at least documents from the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, Mayorkas, because he is terrible. He's a horribly terrible Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. But 6 new subpoenas have been issued by the House of Representatives, thanks to Congressman James Comer, the House Oversight Committee chairman, who is a Republican from the great state of Kentucky. And they want documents from the Department of Homeland Security and Alejandro Mayorkas, because he's not on our side. And also, they want depositions from the Director of Oversight for the Department of Homeland Security, Office of Legislative Affairs, whose name is K. Sheikh Pal. K. Sheikh, like Sheikh of Arabic. K. Sheikh Pal, P-A-L. They want depositions from him. The Assistant Secretary to the Office of Legislative Affairs, whose name is Zefrani Butau. Nobody is named Bob Jones here. DHS Senior Advisor to the General Counsel, Stephen Jonas. Got that going for us. The Assistant Director of the Secret Service, their Intergovernmental and Legislative Affairs Office, who's Vincent Tuttoni. I assume they're all criminals. They're guilty until proven innocent in today's America. Acting Special Agent in charge of the Congressional Affairs Program for the U.S. Secret Service, whose name is David McKeown. And David McKeon is getting a subpoena, too. Now, the Democrats, they're going to laugh this off, and the news media is going to laugh it off because, they don't care about subpoenas. They don't care about the rule of law. Don't you know who they are? They're the Democrats. So we've got that going for us. Now, Congressman Comer was on the Fox News Channel last night, and he said, listen, there's been a lot of obstruction here by the permanent bureaucracy, also known as the deep state. You can get your deep state T-shirts and coffee mugs at the Chris Plant store on Al Gore's amazing internet, along with lots of other great stuff, mostly peaceful. And were it not for double standards, liberals would have no standards at all. They make great gifts. The liberals love them. And here's Congressman James Comer talking about all of the various agencies obstructing the Congress.
The IRS investigation into Hunter Biden, which, as we've heard from the IRS whistleblowers, was leading directly to Joe Biden, was obstructed. We've been obstructed at every turn, not only by the Biden attorneys, but also by the Department of Justice, by Homeland Security now. We've been obstructed by the media. We've been obstructed by Democrats on the House Oversight Committee, the FBI, and the list goes on and on.
Yeah, get your deep state T-shirts and coffee mugs. Now, it's the permanent bureaucracy in Washington. It is the deep state. And there are a lot of criminals in there who should probably be frog-marched out in front of cameras with handcuffs and leg restraints, of course. Congressman Comer.
I've been in conversation with a lot of the moderate members who obviously, for various reasons, have been concerned about this. But the evidence is overwhelming. And the fact that the White House announced today they're creating a war room as opposed to cooperating with our investigation. If Joe Biden's completely innocent, if he's running the most transparent administration in history, like he said, if he's been completely honest with the American people about his knowledge and involvement in his family's shady business schemes, then why won't they just comply with our request?
Well, don't be silly. I mean, that's a rhetorical question, I assume. It's because they're criminals, and criminals cover up their crimes. Honestly, and the war room, I've talked about this, they're standing up the war room because, Congressman James Comer.
Even members of the moderate wing of our party are realizing this could potentially be the biggest political scandal in my adult lifetime.
In the history of the country, bribery, international scandal from Ukraine to China, Russia to Romania, Hunter Biden, the many front corporations, the $20 million, the quid pro quos. No problem. Only if we had a media. You know that CBDs are everywhere now. CBD is going into everything, everywhere you look. And my friends at Generic CBD have infused CBDs into their #1 best-selling, deep-penetrating muscle and joint cream. And let me tell you, the stuff is amazing. It melts right into your knees, your elbows, shoulder, back. especially those stiff hands, your fingers, your knuckles. Goes to work in a matter of seconds, and my best girl assures me it's a great, fantastic moisturizer, too. So the company is called GenericCBD.com. We love them. You've heard me talk about them before. They sell premium CBD products for less money, and right now, you can get their muscle and joint cream absolutely free. Free. You pay $2.95 for shipping, and that's it. But don't worry, it's not a subscription. There are no strings attached. They just want you to try it because they know that you're going to love it. You're going to be buying it for your mom and for your neighbors. You're going to get it for yourself. Get your free sample at GenericCBD.com. That's GenericCBD, GenericCBD.com. These products and statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. These products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease or illness. Yeah, other than all the obstructions, boy, if we had a media, then the Associated Press gets to Kamala and they say, Trump is sure awful. Shouldn't he go to jail for a long time? And she agrees with him. And we have mailbag coming up after the news at the top of the hour. Because it's Wednesday. You know. It's Prince Spaghetti Day in the South End of Boston. Let's go to old TV commercial. Let's go to, a lot of great mailbag questions, too. Let's go to the phones. Let's go to Mike calling from Southern Maryland. Michael, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Hey, Chris, long time no speak. We're in a very dangerous time in the history of our country, and I want to know why the Republicans are still acting like a bunch of kick dogs. Joe Biden is a clear and present danger to the United States and her citizens, and not one of them, which makes him a traitor, not one of them has mentioned that. They're going to do the same thing they did with Hillary. They're going to talk about it. Hopefully Joe won't yell at him like she did and said, what difference does it make? 4 people are dead, but I'm okay. And this election season, I don't see any reason why they're not going to do the same thing they did last time. And that's obviously they stole the election. We're going to get Gavin Newsom or Michelle Obama, and they're going to continue to do the same thing until this country fails. I don't think people realize it, but we are on the verge of failure right now. Also, I wonder how many Chinese special forces have walked across that border, probably in full uniform carrying their AKs, or maybe they rode over in tanks dragging their artillery behind them.
It wouldn't be a complete surprise, would it? We caught them spying on our bases all over the country days ago.